I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Tell these salty motherfuckers to tell the truth. Tell politicians to give up the rooms. Tell silent voters to stand up to the booth.
God, it's me. Can you hear my plea? Feeling like I'm lost in this world, can't you see? Demons creeping in, trying to take control of me. But I'm just trying to find the light, trying to break.
Oh shit, what the hell happened? I didn't take the time.
I'm not perfect.
Yeah, I didn't even do the whole shit right. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. You already know how I start this off. Here goes Rashad Lee winning, and we'll be right back right after this.
I go to do what I do. You talk about rags, my nigga, we sick of the cap. I promise I'm not in the mood, cause nigga, I'm different. I'm always gonna end at the finish.
Yeah.
K-Zoo, Rashad Lee. Let's go. Wait till I'm winning and hate on me now, That's a hell of a foul. Niggas been sweating, go get them a towel. I earn my respect and they tearing me down. I look for my niggas, nowhere to be found. I'm standing on business with 10 on the ground. I said I'm a king, they ain't give me the crown. I know they gon' hatin', so this what I found. You niggas got guards and hoes who poppin' at all the shows, but what does it prove? You ain't got the heart to soul, the reason to go where I go or to do what I do. You talk about rags, my nigga, we sick of the cap. I promise I'm not in the mood, cause nigga, I'm different. I'm always gon' end at the finish. I've been having nothing to lose. You doing the most, you going outside. Damn. I admit that I wanna do better at life. No, a nigga just wanna do better than last. You know how I do it. I'm doing this shit for my city, man. Fuck if a hater talking, know the people gon' feel me. I know they listen, it's hella revealing. I peep the comments, niggas stay acting silly. I ran it up and I ain't talking to Millie. Paying homage, man, this shit for the real. I was down and ain't nobody love me. It was fuck the world, and man, that's still how I feel. Times I was hungry in search of a meal. Nights where I hope and I pray for a deal. Now niggas watching, they think it's unreal. Heavy hustle got me dead on the heels. I paid the cost and now we winning for real. My nigga, I'm winning and hate on me now, That's a hell of a foul. Niggas been sweating, go get them a towel. I earn my respect and they tearing me down. I look for my niggas, nowhere to be found. I'm standing on business with 10 on the ground. I said I'm a king, they ain't give me the crown. I know they gon' hatin', so this what I found. You niggas got guards and hoes who poppin' at all the shows, but what does it prove? You ain't got the heart to soul, the reason to go where I go or to do what I do. You talk about rags, my nigga, we sick of the cap. I promise I'm not in the mood, cause nigga, I'm different. I'm always gon' end at the finish. I've been having nothing to lose. Out of body, I've been out of my soul. Can't let it go. Out of patience, I've been out of control. I'm setting the pace, I've been on the road. Niggas is fake, they breaking the code. My niggas say what? You know how I get it. Ask about me, niggas know that I been had the game in the skillet. Dropping pressure, been the seeking my limit. A couple niggas probably ain't gonna feel it. I don't give a fuck. Some niggas dead on their luck. I'm stepping, ain't letting them up. I've been had enough. Saying they love me, but really mean it. I don't know who to trust. Easy money and I do it legit. Haters watching, hope a nigga would slip. Try to copy, niggas been on my dick. Thinking back to when a nigga want shit. This one for the zoo, my city for the ship. My nigga, let's get winning and hate on me now, That's a hell of a foul. Niggas been sweating, go get them a towel. I earn my respect and they tearing me down. I look for my niggas, nowhere to be found. I'm standing on business with 10 on the ground. I said I'm a king, they ain't give me the crown. I know they gon' hatin', so this what I found. You niggas got guards and hoes who poppin' at all the shows, but what does it prove? You ain't got the heart to soul, the reason to go where I go or to do what I do. You talk about rags, my nigga, we sick of the cap. I promise I'm not in the mood, cause nigga, I'm different. I'm always gon' end at the finish. I've been having nothing to lose.
That was Rashad Lee winning. Right now,
So with that, I will just give a brief overview of our report, and I encourage the public and members of the committee, if you haven't read it, to read it. And I will also send it out to all the members of the House in both parties, and they can hopefully read it over the interim, because there's a lot to learn from our work over the last 2 years, and we need to make sure that we continue to push for the changes that we've identified. So generally speaking, we found that the Walz administration enabled fraud by having a culture that accepted fraud, tolerated fraud, tried to suppress fraud in some ways, and did not hold anyone accountable in the agencies. And the public sees that there are being criminal indictments and charges and sentencing for the criminals who engaged in this fraud through our federal partners at the U.S. Attorney's Office. And we're grateful for the justice on the criminal side, but we also need accountability in the agencies and in the administration, and we will continue to push for that. Secondly, I think when we started this work, I don't think we even grasped the scale of the fraud. And I think one of the values of this committee is exposing the scope of the fraud that sadly has gone on in Minnesota government. We first saw it in childcare, then it went to Feeding Our Future. And from there, that same pattern morphed into a lot of the Medicaid waivered services program. So many of the programs that we've looked at in our hearings, housing stabilization, integrated community support, sober homes, non-emergency medical transportation, all of these vectors of fraud in a lot of the Medicaid waivered services programs really were spawned from the original fraud back in childcare and then Feeding Our Future. And some of the same actors were involved in these webs of fraud. And I just think, certainly I didn't fully understand that when we got into this, and I think that has been an important contribution of our work. So we also, on page 9, for anyone who's following along, the anatomy of fraud, which I know our colleague Representative Greenman also called the business model of fraud. We've spent a lot of time talking about this and identifying these patterns, and I think that is an important thing for the public to look at and to understand, to recognize these signs, and for agency personnel to realize this is the pattern. It's not new. It's not rocket science. We have seen the same pattern over and over and over, and we have to clamp down on it right away. The agencies had the tools. They could have done more on the front end. They could have declared the programs high risk much earlier. They could have done unannounced site inspections. They could have done prepayment reviews. Any of these things years ago would have helped reduce the volume of the fraud, and it's unfortunate that did not happen, but I do think the agencies now are doing more, and we expect them to do more going forward. Then the rest of the report is topical. We go through our hearings and our findings from childcare fraud, from Feeding Our Future, from the different topics we considered and the hearings we had in all these vectors of fraud. And it's very detailed, but I think it's really important not only to show the findings, but then at the end of the report, we go through our recommendations. And the recommendations are the roadmap. The findings are the roadmap for how to spot and stop fraud, not only for our state, but in other states. I think other states are now also taking this seriously. But the recommendations are things we need to implement yet this session and then next year in future sessions so that we can actually stop the fraud, because it is still going on. As we saw last week when we were here, or 2 weeks ago, the FBI conducted 22 raids. Yesterday, there was an indictment in a raid that had happened by a couple weeks ago in SNAP. So the first SNAP indictment came out yesterday. This is going on in real time in our state, and we cannot turn a blind eye, as the Walz administration has done, and we cannot say, oh, we're done for session, we're not doing this anymore. No. This work has to continue. It's incumbent on all of us who now know the scope of this to continue the work. And although the committee will be adjourned, our staff and I are going to continue to do the investigation from all the whistleblower reports we keep doing. Our committee will keep doing investigative work and turning credible findings over to law enforcement over the interim. Potentially, we will hold informational hearings if warranted, and hopefully we will be gearing up for additional legislation next session when the body comes back. So I really encourage people to take a look at the recommendations section, and I encourage my colleagues, if you choose to put together a minority report, that you also have a very robust recommendation section. So I look forward to that. So with that, I'm going to open it up for any statements or questions, and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you, members, for your hard work this session. it literally has made a difference for our state, and I'm grateful to everyone who's been serving on the committee. Lead Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe a question, will there be, it sounds like you plan to have a vote. Will there be, is there like a motion to adopt the report, or how are you planning to do this process-wise?
Yes, so I will move adoption of the report. I guess I can move it now, and then we can have the discussion. So I move the adoption of the majority report for the 2025-2026 session. It's seconded by Vice Chair Anderson, and now we can discuss the adoption of the report. Lead Pinto.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to wait for you. I did want to note that Representative Elkins is in budget negotiations. That's why he's not able to join us today.
Yes, thank you. And I'll just interrupt that Representative Nash is likewise occupied with, I believe, Ways and Means or something. So he has another meeting. I can't remember.
Hope it's not Ways and Means, because I'm in Ways and Means as well.
Then you would be there.
I guess we'll find out. Madam Chair, Representative Greenman and I plan to abstain from the vote, and because we care about transparency, I want to tell you and the public why. And I want to recount to the public how this process has gone. I had asked if the three members of the minority could provide input on the report or even see it a few days in advance so we'd have time to review and give comments. Instead, this is an 80-page report posted less than 24 hours ago, full of partisan nonsense and speculation, some good information as well, but a lot of errors. Just to provide one example, it says our Attorney General has prosecuted very few Medicaid fraud cases, when in fact, we heard in this committee in evidence that it's one of the most effective Medicaid fraud control units of its size in the country. Many other examples, but you've said you won't consider any changes to it, won't delay the vote. And I want to note that this document has already been signed by 5 of the members of the committee. When it was posted, it had already been presumably reviewed, approved, and signed by 5 of the 8 members of the committee. And the other 3 members of the committee saw it less than 24 hours before the vote to adopt. So the Republican members have already signed. You won't consider any changes. You've said we can't be a part of it. So I don't know what the point is of why we're even voting, and what good a partisan report such as this and a partisan approach has for the serious work that our state has to do on fraud. Look, everyone is mad about fraud. Fraud has no political bias. We are in a tied house. True progress requires collaboration. We have seen that in other committees. We could have worked across the aisle together in this committee as well. But this committee has been so committed to winning political points that it's achieved nothing. And having this document as the conclusion is sort of the final confirmation. This document that came together without any input, any review, anything from 3 of the 8 members of the committee. So here's what, to my mind, here's what we've learned from the committee. We've learned that when you commit time to making a problem a spectacle, you take time away from the actual work to solve the problems. In many ways, you create skepticism around the problem that even hinders the work. Like when Operation Metro Surge set us back in the fight against fraud by driving out the U.S. attorneys who had been leading that very fight. We also learned that fraud prevention, as it's a serious issue, will in fact happen in serious committees. While we were in this committee, listening to partisan presentation after partisan presentation, many bills were making their way through the legislative process, and supported, may I say, by Republicans and by Democrats. Bills that increased oversight, hired more investigators, cleaned up grant management, held criminals accountable, created the Office of Inspector General. Every other committee did the work that this committee could have, and most importantly, the committee showed that you've created a second reality. A second approach, because when you only tell half the story, well, then you see what you want to see and say what you want to be true. You can't fathom that the Attorney General has in fact prosecuted and convicted hundreds of people for Medicaid fraud because it doesn't fit the narrative. You don't understand why voters are marked as inactive to catch fraud because you need to believe that there's election fraud in Minnesota or that reality breaks. We're not talking about the president pardoning criminal fraudsters, white-collar crime and wage theft, about tax evasion. So these are all the ways in which when you create this second reality, we're not willing to talk about the nuance, the private businesses gaming the system, getting away with it. And so while some people are playing to social media, you end up missing crucial parts of the problem. We need to live in one reality and take a serious problem more seriously. So as someone who prosecutes fraud myself outside the legislature, I genuinely hoped for real work coming out of the committee, and I'm genuinely disappointed. What a missed opportunity. And I hope that social media followers enjoyed this because it was clearly about them. and not the people of Minnesota. This document that's already been signed by 5 of the 8 members, I suspect that those people want the document that they've already signed to be something that is presented, and good luck with that. This is a real missed opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Lead Pinto. I would like to respond to that, and I'm sure many of my colleagues would as well. First of all, I want to remind you and the body and the public that this is an oversight committee. And the role of the oversight committee is to perform an oversight function. We bring people in from the agencies, from the administration, we hear from the public, we hear from whistleblowers, and the product of an oversight committee is a report, generally a majority report and a minority report. And just to make sure that we were well within tradition of other oversight bodies, because this is new to our legislature, I worked with the House of Representatives Oversight Committee in Washington, D.C. And indeed, they told me that they always produce a majority report and a minority report separately, and they don't give any advance notice to the minority, any opportunity to review it. They each just produce their own report. And we gave you 24 hours. I realized that I wished to give you more, but just for circumstances of how time was going with some personal issues with our staff who were working on it, we were not able to get it done as soon as possible. But 24 hours is more than normal process in an oversight committee. And I told you at least a month ago, and when we formed the committee, we had in the rules that there was going to be the opportunity for a majority report and a minority report. So when the committee was constituted and we voted on our rules, that was signaled. And then I told you in person probably a month ago, and I invited you to get a minority report done. I welcome your comments. And so for you to say that this was an alternate reality or the not proper way to handle it is mistaken and misunderstanding the role of the Oversight Committee. All of us, as I've said in previous hearings, have been involved in good bipartisan work, which I support, to pass bills through the legislature that have had great bipartisan support, including the work of Vice Chair Anderson and the team who did the OIG bill. Fantastic bipartisan work in the committees of jurisdiction, which are the committees that pass those bills. All of those bills had to go through other committees, and that's where that legislation work was done. Our role is to have hearings, to uncover fraud, to find ways to strengthen internal controls, and then create those bills that get passed by other committees. And we have done that work, and I'm proud of the bipartisan work we have done. We have significantly, through your suggestion and leadership, we have significantly reduced the number of earmarks coming out of this legislature. We have expanded whistleblower protection. We have passed the Independent Office of Inspector General bill. We've had multiple bills to strengthen internal controls. We have done, I think, a very excellent body of work through our committee, in other committees, and as a body of this legislature. And that work needs to continue. That's why we have a very robust recommendation section. But the work we've done over the last 2 years has significantly contributed to that. And then I also wanted to just reference something about being in an alternative reality. I just thought that was such an odd phrase, because I felt like that's how the public and the administration has felt for so long. There's been billions of dollars of fraud going on in this state, and the administration has actively chosen to ignore and suppress information of the fraud and keep it from the public and keep it from law enforcement so things weren't getting done. They've been creating an alternate reality that we finally pulled the curtain back. And the public is grateful. And that has been, I think, a significant contribution of this committee. And I also wanted to touch very briefly on the work of the Attorney General. He did appear before the committee twice. And I do think they've done some prosecutions. I sent a letter to the Attorney General, I believe in March or April, asking for a list of all of the cases they've taken, how much money they've recovered, the resolution of the cases, because they have, as the Attorney General has said many times, original jurisdiction in Medicaid cases. It is shocking to me that when they have original jurisdiction, My understanding is that they've recovered $80 million, which is a drop in the bucket
Right.
of
Compared to what-
more than $9 billion. And I asked the Attorney General for a complete listing of all their cases, the resolution, because he claimed credit for dissolving 17 nonprofits associated with this. Most of them had already been dissolved. So I asked for details on that. I have never had a response from the Attorney General's office. I would still love one. But while I do agree that the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit has done some good work, and I appreciate that they're taking a lead on some of these SNAP cases, on I think, oh no, it's the feds doing SNAP. They had a prosecution in the Attorney General's case a couple weeks ago that actually, and this is not a reflection on the Attorney General, but the judge allowed a low bail and the guy absconded and now is in Kenya. I mean, so their record is fine, but I would not say it's stellar because of the volume of the fraud and the low number of prosecutions. And I think we also have serious questions, as I've outlined in the report, about the Attorney General's relationship with some of the fraudsters. He met with them while he was defending the Minnesota Department of Education, and that raises serious questions about how robust his defense was, or if it wasn't. He has, and I've outlined it in the report, conflicting statements. At some points, he claims great credit for being involved, and at other points, he said he has no knowledge of the case. So we had asked the Attorney General to return to address some of these questions. He declined, but I would just counter your robust defense of the Attorney General and say that there is still a lot of things about his record on Medicaid prosecutions that are unclear, and I hope he will respond to our inquiry. Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and you're doing a great job at just outlining exactly what this committee has been up to and also the result of our work. So well done. But I actually want to respond directly to Representative Pinto and the claims that he made in his remarks moments ago. And he said that what we presented as it related to the Ellison Medicaid fraud unit, that what we suggested was inaccurate. And at the same time, he didn't bring any evidence or state how many cases. He said it was wrong of us to say that the Medicaid fraud unit has not taken enough action on Medicaid fraud investigations, and then failed to list any specifically. So he just labels it and says, you know, we have the best, and then provides no evidence, provides no detail to his claim. Literally failed to do so, while then also making a claim that this committee had partisan presentations that took place over 25 hearings. And if you open to page 2 of the report, Representative Pinto, what you will see is that of 25 meetings, 23 of them included presentations from Governor Walz's administration. Presentations from Governor Walz's administration, from his Department of Human Services, from his Department of, or his Office of Management and Budget, from countless other agencies, including DEED, as it relates to paid family and medical leave, as it relates to grant management. These are the partisan presentations. Presentations from Democrats. That's what they are. 23 of 25 meetings from this Republican-controlled committee. We allowed the administration to provide presentations at 23 of 25 hearings. So let's then talk about the process on this report that's in front of us. Let's talk about how this report, which is 84 pages long, was delivered with notification that it was coming, and the work of our committee that has been done over these 2 years was delivered within 24 hours of this hearing, which brings to mind a memory for all of us. The 2023-2024 omnibus bill that arrived to the floor of the House at 11:10 p.m. to be voted on, that was over 1,400 pages in length. Oh, and by the way, it arrived in some form or fashion where no member was able to see it or read it at all, whether online or whether in a printed copy. It did not exist. And yet, the members of this committee on the Democrat side of the aisle, Representative Pinto, Representative Greenman, and Representative Elkins, all voted for a 1,400-page bill that no one had ever seen before.
Right. Good one, Sean.
It didn't exist.
Good one.
You could not find it.
Good one.
And somehow, delivering an 84-page report that is the summation of the work that we've done 24 hours in advance is too much for you to flip through. While probably later today we'll take up some bill that hasn't had that same amount of time and be expected to vote on it, and yet somehow it's partisan for us to bring forward this report here and allow you the chance to provide input on it and to allow you the chance to vote on it. Fascinating, I'll just say that, especially when you're trying to label the work of this committee as being hyper-partisan and that we didn't do work together. When at the same time, I believe it's now 2 weeks ago, we passed 4 great fraud prevention bills on a bipartisan basis that were supported by members of this committee for payment withholds, to ensure that agencies were stopping grants going to convicted fraudsters. That was a Bonner bill. Or increasing the statute of limitations, or enhancing the ability of the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension as it relates to identity theft and fraud, or the work of Vice Chair Anderson and the Independent Office of Inspector General bill. Or the fact that prior to this committee's existence, Representative Pinto, prior authorization was not done for Medicaid-funded service providers. And now we're doing that. All of that has happened in the time that this committee existed. Then let's also talk about one of your other claims, that there's no election fraud in Minnesota. And at the same time, and I'm sure that my colleague, Representative Altendorf, can give you the exact details because there are specific examples of convicted election fraud in Minnesota. While at the same time, you on the other side of the aisle passed legislation in 2023 and 2024 to allow for people without lawful status in our country to have the exact same driver's license, to be able to be used as a mechanism of identification to vote. That is what has happened while the city that Representative Greenman represents has literally provided the guidance for them to be able to vote in municipal elections using the same voter registration system that is then shared with the Secretary of State's office. While at the same time that Secretary of State Steve Simon has rejected the request from the Department of Justice to ensure that we are following federal election law, to ensure that there are only lawful people voting in our elections. This is today's Democrat Party.
Right.
The Democratic Party. The picture has been painted.
Right.
It's been painted in this committee. It's been painted over these last few years.
Right.
And it's a stark contrast to where Minnesotans are at today.
Right.
So there's the truth.
Mike.
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Schultz, for, I think, justifying and providing the proof points for what Lead Pinto said. You just said that this committee was about the picture having been painted about what the Democratic Party is. But this committee is called the Fraud Prevention and Government Oversight Committee, not the make the case and picture what you think the Democratic Party is. And I think that that's the point. I also have noticed that we seem to have dropped the fraud prevention part of the conversation. So I've heard you say a lot about government oversight, but fraud prevention actually means advancing solutions that get to the root of the problem and all of the other solutions you mentioned. Representative Schultz, you mentioned a bunch of bills. None of those bills went through this committee, and all of those bills would have happened without this committee because of the work that, and some of these people on this committee have been doing that work. Some people have been working on anti-fraud bills that your party chose to vote against for inexplicable reasons. But regardless, all of that is happening in a set of other spaces that are not this committee. And you know, the reason I think it's important that we don't just change the definition from fraud prevention and government oversight to government oversight is exactly the reason and what I think that this report has turned into, which is this is sort of no Democratic leader left undisparaged, but it actually, and I think that there are pieces in this of pages that in a different context could actually be useful. There is pieces in a different context that we have learned that we could have in the missed opportunity would have been going down and talking about that fraud prevention and getting more structural. I said this last week. But we didn't do that because it was, you know, and I'm not going to take the bait to be able to school you again on how our elections work and how a conviction means that the system of oversight worked. But sort of bringing in, vacillating wildly from Medicaid fraud to voter fraud to whatever the Center of the American Experiment has a report on tomorrow is not actually good governing. It is about, again, painting, the picture has been painted about what Democrats are. And again, that's not a good use of state dollars. And it's not actually taking seriously the problem, the fraud prevention problem. The last thing I'll say is, you know, I think this is not the last thing to say. To that point, I guess I'd say about, we've been talking a lot about the Attorney General and his office, right? And we all know how that works. And I think that that's been one of the intentionally misleading pieces of all this. But it's not just that the AG came in and told us about the 350 prosecutions. I was sitting in public safety where we heard about the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit that is under-resourced compared to other states, which we are taking care of, and is overperforming. And you might not like the Attorney General. You might have a candidate you want to beat him. But when we have the nonpartisan prosecutors and we see, as it compares to other places in the country, the conviction rate, the restitution rate, and the places that we have given the AG authority, which is in Medicaid fraud, it's not in SNAP, it's not in many other places, which I think my colleagues across the aisle learned on this committee, but their criminal conviction authority for the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, they are, to use a colloquial term, punching above their weight compared to other states that are also trying to fight this issue of Medicaid fraud. And that is not at all encompassed in here. In fact, that there is a quote here that I think is misleading, and if we had had the opportunity to actually look at this, it said, I think, that it's that the AG is prosecuting relatively few cases. I think that should be corrected. I think if we had had this report ahead of time, we could have not done this in this hearing, but actually just said to you, there's lots of typos in this report too. There's misquotes that I don't actually think were intentional. But when I'm going through this, I mean, if you want me to give you my red lines, we can, but that's not what this process was meant for, and it's not what this process allowed. The last thing, and I think the most important thing, and again, how you all have described this is telling. Modeling anything after Congress is not what Minnesota wants. It doesn't seem like a good model. People right now think that Congress is broken across the aisle. And when we look at their oversight hearings, they are show trials. And we know that, and you know that, and it doesn't matter. Whoever is in charge, the opposite folks who are called in front of the committee know that. But the partisan show trials of Congress is not something that we should emulate here. I think, in fact, what we should emulate is the work that's been happening in other committees, which is folks digging into the problem, folks working with both each other and the people who are impacted by by this fraud and by the abuse, by people in the agencies and people in local government.
Yeah, I'm going to stop it there. Talk about gun safety. Is that something that is going on at the Capitol? And that is something that people should pay attention to, because the Senate did pass the gun bill, but the House, which is tied, probably won't, and they shouldn't, because that is unconstitutional, just like that omnibus bill of 23-24, where they gave out $1.1 billion to nonprofits. And we have no type of accountability. You've seen the DHS people that were running it get bonuses. Come on, like, are people not actually going to call this shit out? Or is it too many people who are getting paid and they don't want to bite the hand that feeds them?
Our top story here at 6 tonight is Annunciation school parents are pressuring Republican leadership to allow a vote on a comprehensive gun safety bill. Now, the DFL majority in the Senate passed it last week, but House Republicans have built some new hurdles for it. Our Capitol reporter Corin Hoggard is there live for us tonight at the Capitol, and some of these Annunciation families are really calling this a broken promise, as I understand it. Tell us more, Corin.
Yeah, Tim, I talked to Mike Moisky, whose daughter Harper is one of the two children who was killed during that Annunciation shooting, and he tells me his family met with Speaker of the House Lisa Damith back in September, and she promised not to block any gun safety bills from getting votes on the House floor. He believes that's exactly what she's doing right now. A call to action came in the form of a nightmare phone call for several Annunciation parents.
I first heard that she had been shot when a police officer called me from the back of the ambulance.
Malia Kimbrell's daughter Vivian was one of about 30 people injured during the August 27th mass shooting. On Tuesday, several healthcare workers demonstrated the massive response it required as they pressed lawmakers to pass a bill to prevent the next one, or at least reduce the harm.
That's what breaks my heart, is this was entirely preventable, and we knew it was preventable, and we didn't do anything to prevent it, and we still haven't.
In the tied House, gun safety measures like a ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines have stalled in committees. And Speaker of the House Lisa Damith insists she has not broken a promise to allow a vote on anything that reaches the House floor. She says the bill passed by the Senate last week has not passed a single committee in the House. But on the House floor, the Speaker has not even acknowledged that bill.
Have we received the message from the Senate for Senate File 4067?
We've received it, but I've been instructed to not report it.
So, Mr. Speaker, that's disappointing to hear. It's been 3 days since the bill passed the Senate. More importantly, it's been 253 days since the tragedy at Annunciation Church.
There are people who have the power to make this come to fruition in a vote, and that's what we're asking for.
Several Annunciation parents, including Mike Moisky, told me that no matter whether it gets a vote or not, whether it passes or not, this is not the end for them. They will continue to move their feet and try to make sure that other parents do not ever feel the grief that they'll live with for the rest of their lives.
You know, the crazy part, like, I feel, you know, when the school shooting, church shooting, whatever, the denunciation, like, I really feel bad. But where were those people when all those babies were getting shot over north? I didn't see people trying to make gun legislation. I mean, even, you know what's crazy? We're still here in 2026 trying to get things passed since 2020. Make that make sense. Make that make sense. But we're supposed to be worried about, like, of course, kids matter. They should always matter. But where was the same type of energy when babies were getting shot in the head for jumping on trampolines or eating McDonald's in the back seat of their parents' car? You know what I'm saying? Or they were just playing at the park. I don't see legislation of them trying to do things to make that, like, come on, man. It's not the same. Like, I don't understand I do understand, because when things happen in impoverished or in poor areas, they don't really care. But because it's the status quo, they do care. They want things to get done. But I'm glad that Lisa is holding the line, because if she wasn't, she already knows that some of the bills that have already been passed this year, she's not going to get elected. She's not. It doesn't even, I will tell you like this, is that when it comes to Democrats and the left and the socialists and all that, the other side, they'll talk shit about Lisa for not passing this gun legislation, right? But don't want to look in that motherfucking mirror and talk about all this fraud that has been on their motherfucking watch and that they allocated. Because a lot of Republicans, I will say this, right? If you go back and look at that 23 and 24 sessions, right? A lot of, when they had the trifecta, a lot of that shit, Republicans, they were the minority. It didn't matter because the Democrats had a majority every time when it came to pass. There was always nays to Democrats and nays to the Republicans. They had enough. They had enough. So now that it's time to actually, I can say this, there's a couple of bills right now that are just sitting on in the House that should not get, even the things that I'm about to talk about right now, with them giving money to immigrants still. Like, come on, man. When are you guys going to give a fuck about Minnesotans? Y'all, all I hear about is immigrants this, foreigners that. I get it. And it's crazy how they're only highly populated in certain areas. Republicans don't want to do nothing about them because that's their labor. They benefit from that shit. They profit from that. This is why the reason why I can't understand a lot of the Republicans and the Democrats, because the Democrats, they just love the immigrants. They just love them. And then when it comes to the Republicans, they're okay with it because they're not hurting their pocket as much. That's what people don't understand. They're not hurting their pocket that much. And that's why you see people that work at McDonald's or the cashier at Walmart or even a convenience store has more than just one job, because they can't afford to live pay the bills that they need to pay, the car, the insurance, the rent. Everything's getting more expensive. No matter if it comes to the groceries, the gas. Shit, I look at these value menus now and like under $3. I'm like, come on, man. Like, really, have we gone that fucking wild that now is a McDouble is $2.50? Like, really, is that really a deal? Because I remember when the McDouble was 99 cents. And now that's a deal. Y'all calling it like on the value menu. Like, that shit's crazy to me. Even when y'all just don't. I know we're in crazy times. People want to get paid more. The cost of living has gone up, but people's wages haven't. What people make is still the same, and it's ridiculous.
Tonight, responding to Operation Metro Surge was a top priority for Democrats when the legislative session started.
And now that it's ending in a week, some big proposals are bubbling up again. Fox 9's Capitol reporter Corin Hoggard is live at the Capitol. And so, Corin, they are talking about potential financial relief and protection policies. Tell us about those.
Yeah, Kelsey and Simone, the Senate had already passed $40 million in rent relief. They passed $100 million in small business recovery loans. And then today, they passed a long list of things that civil law enforcement, which is most of what ICE does, cannot do. Chaos at Roosevelt High School and a spectacle outside a Hennepin County courtroom. Operation Metro Surge's ICE activity bled into places immigration enforcement had never gone before, and places some say it should never go.
In this bill, we are standing up to lawlessness. We are standing up for the Constitution and the rights of every person protected by that Constitution.
A Senate bill would outlaw civil enforcement at schools, child care centers, hospitals, or around courthouses. It also bans masked law enforcement except for undercover and tactical response teams. People could sue if officers violate these restrictions, but Republicans say it'll be the state facing lawsuits from the federal government if the bill becomes law.
We're setting ourselves up for Minnesota taxpayers to be tied up in court for years with millions and millions of state tax dollars spent to try to defend this.
The DFL majority Senate has passed several bills in response to Metro Surge, but in the tied House, nothing has moved far. But House Democrats say it is a key topic for them in negotiations taking place every day for a global deal to close the session.
We're still very aware of the harm that was done, and we will keep it top of mind as long as we're having these discussions until we gavel out.
And Senate Republicans opposed all of these measures. They said any damage is really self-inflicted, and they backed up everything that ICE has done. I will say, though, on the House side, there is at least one GOP member who said he did feel the impact of Operation Metro Surge. His business lost a couple employees during the surge, and he told me he would be interested in at least some small business recovery loans. So that is part of the negotiations to close this session. Live at the Capitol, Corin Hoggard, Fox 9.
All right, thank you, Corin. One of the senators.
My thing of it is that really helping Minnesotans? I don't honestly believe that it is. And even when we, that's the one thing that's crazy to me is like there's all this fraud, but we're coming to find out that DHS was paying themselves bonuses. Like, how are you awarding yourself for all the wrong shit that was going on? I don't understand that. So let's hear that story.
Investigates is tracking your tax dollars. $3.2 million to be exact.
That's how much money the Minnesota Department of Human Services paid out in bonuses to employees in the last 5 years. Investigative reporter Kirsten Swanson obtained data showing these payouts. Kirsten.
Well, guys, they're called achievement awards handed out to employees across state government to recognize outstanding performance. We found the state's largest agency, DHS, paid hundreds of employees each year, including a small team working on a Medicaid-funded program fraught with fraud.
The praise rolled in for the team working on the state's Housing Stabilization Services program.
She has consistently supported the team
by working overtime to help manage the request backlog.
His efforts have been instrumental in reducing processing time.
In May of 2025, DHS rewarded 9 program staff and eligibility review specialists with an Achievement Award, the $1,000 and $2,000 bonuses given for their work on the Medicaid service that helped vulnerable people find and keep housing. But just 3 months after those payments went through,
the level of fraud in these programs is staggering.
The program collapsed.
In an unprecedented move, the state of Minnesota is shutting down the Housing Stabilization Services program.
Initially estimated to cost the state just $2.6 million a year, it surpassed $100 million in billed services by 2025.
These programs have been abused over and over to the point where the fraud has overtaken the legitimate services.
DHS tells us those 9 staff who received achievement awards had no role in reviewing claims or making payments. But data obtained by 5 Investigates shows as Medicaid payments soared in 14 high-risk programs, millions of dollars also went directly to DHS employees.
Since 2020, the department paid more than $3.2 million in achievement awards. The amounts range from $1,000 to $3,000 per person. According to DHS policy, employees nominate an individual or team for outstanding work or results-based efforts. Senior leaders then review the nominations and select who gets an award. Using state payroll data, 5 Investigates found DHS employed about 8,300 workers during this time period. Roughly 6% received a bonus.
They are supposed to be a unique thing that you get for a distinct project that you did.
Faye Bernstein is a current DHS employee who blew the whistle on the agency's grant management practices.
I have never gotten one. 20 years. I'm probably the only 20-year employee who has never gotten one.
In a statement to 5 Investigates, DHS says the state has expanded the Achievement Awards policy to include recognition of staff efforts to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse, and to strengthen internal controls. During a recent interview, our Kevin Doran asked then DHS Commissioner Shreen Gandhi directly about those incentives for staff.
Were DHS employees ever given any kind of incentive to get the money out? Bonuses?
No, I don't recall anything like that. Anybody, giving a bonus for employees to get the money out.
As we combed through this data, we discovered that Gandhi herself received an achievement award. In May of 2022, she served as Assistant Commissioner for Agency Effectiveness and received a $1,600 bonus for diversity recognition. In a leadership shakeup announced last week that we previously reported on, Gandhi stepped down as commissioner, but
the thing of it is, I don't expect her to bite the hand that's fed her. I mean, Walz is protecting her. I mean, you got to look at it. The day before she was supposed to go in front of for confirmation, they demoted her. And then a guy who's out sick is her replacement. So now she's the intern. That makes no sense to me. Like, one thing that we're failing to see in Minnesota is accountability. And that is a big, 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 big issue. It should be, at least. What's crazy to me, I sit through and I go through, court documents, and I go through just a lot of shit, right? And I see a pattern. When it comes to drugs, we give, slaps on the wrists. When it comes to child predators, we give slaps on the wrist. I mean, the things that I saw back in the 80s and 90s of like child molestation, abuse, sexual abuse, didn't matter if it was at the Pillsbury House or the Boy Scouts of America in Minneapolis. If you, not lying, these are all public knowledge, or should be, and that just shows me that we have way too many motherfuckers who are elected officials who only have moved to the Twin Cities or moved to Minnesota when they don't know, they don't understand the stories about Pluky Duke or how the gangs used to run through here in the 80s and 90s. And you just see that a lot of people don't understand that. They don't understand that McAfee was already here back then, back in the 80s and 90s. Y'all don't, come on. Y'all don't remember when Brian Herron was taking bribes and blackmail. You don't understand how Major Tops was giving head to Clarence Hightower. Like, that shit's crazy to me. Or they don't understand about how VJ Smith was out here sexually harassing women's at Mad Dads. Like, people don't want, that Lisa Clemens was kicked off the crack team. You have people that they don't know that history. They don't know that Keith Ellison already has railroaded so many young black men. Or even when it comes to Amy Klobuchar. Amy Klobuchar is the big one. And that's how I can really tell that people in Minnesota, and especially when it comes to the Twin Cities, and especially when it comes to the niggas in the DFL party, they don't care. So when I see an Eliza Darris or anybody that has been sitting behind bars, and you're going to ride with the DFL party, the people that have made sure that you were locked up, made sure of it because they're Democratic failed policies. Republicans ain't no better, but they don't really have no control. At the state level, they do, but not when it comes to inside of Hennepin County and Minneapolis. There hasn't been no Republican, any type of lawmaker in Hennepin County. Oh, well, I shouldn't even say that because that's probably not all the way true. I think it's gone back to, I know the council hasn't. And that's why that council is so far leaning left, it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous of how you literally have, yeah, the fact that they can even say that phrase, that shit just be wild because you look at that Minneapolis City Council and I see 13 bodies up there, right? I see Elliot Payne, I see Jason Chavez, Jamal Osman, Aisha Shagtai, Pearl Warren, Vitar, Rainville. Like the shit just be crazy. And then to sit around people, like when I was in the, I'll just say like BLM or whatever, and I was paying attention to like city councils, and I would just see that most of these people that were out there marching or like yelling didn't even know who these people were. So I'm like, wait, why are you even here if you're not here to get rid of the problem? You just are trying to become the problem. And that's how I've always seen it, especially when it came to BLM, NAACP, Urban League, because they all have been in some shit for years. This isn't new. A lot of this information isn't new, but it's been buried. And they've made sure that people won't talk about it. And if they do talk about it, I'm just not scared. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck about McAfee. I don't give a fuck about Marquise. I don't give a fuck about none of these lame ass niggas in Minneapolis or even Rochester. Because I'll tell you like this, when I was in that life, a lot of these niggas were dope fiends, hypes, and now they want to become community leaders. Get the fuck out of here, nigga. You was just sucking on that glass dick 10 years ago. Sucking on that glass dick. And now people mess with trannies are called community leaders. People mess with other gay men, community leaders. And it's like, where the fuck have we gone wrong, man? You can't even look in a community no more. Even when at church, you see a gay pastor. How is that not an abomination? How is that not blasphemy? Yeah, we can love one another. That doesn't mean we have to accept it. And that's the crazy thing that I really do feel like people have a big ass issue with is when it comes to the LGBTQ and gay. Listen, man, you fuck who you want to fuck, right? God loves everybody. That doesn't mean that he's okay with it. And the fact that we make churches okay with that is wild as hell to me. And especially that the state, and I'm talking about government, is all up inside the church. It's crazy as hell to me because I really do believe that George Bush opened that door with faith-based initiatives. Because I really don't ever remember seeing no gay pastors. No, even seeing a woman pastor nowadays is kind of weird to me because I didn't grow up seeing that. Not saying that there's anything wrong with it, but I'm just, how can you? Because even in my marriage, right, my relationship with Ashley, it doesn't work unless it's 50-50. If one is doing more than the other, there's going to be a lot of envy, a lot of bitterness, and you got to have communication. Got to have communication. And I'm not saying I'm perfect because I don't really believe any of us are. I'm a sinner, but I repent. I repent for all the sins that I've done. I repent for, what the crazy thing of it is, what a lot of people don't want to talk about, and I still remember this like it was the back of my hand, man, is one of the reasons why I was locked up as a juvenile was shooting at Jerry McAfee and Sharif Willis and hitting a female. They tried to give me the book, benefit of a gang. But the only thing that really saved me was my age. And at that time, I was too young. They tried to make me an adult. all kinds of shit. Took me had my mom sign a paper talk about they were getting me help and became a ward of the state. I didn't even know where my mom was for like 2 years. But I was all over the state of Minnesota. Getting kicked out of the Wilson Center in Faribault, being in Waseca, it was a kiddie prison, going to boot camp. Man, I was a badass kid. I ain't gonna lie. I was bad. I was bad as hell. That's because I really didn't have anybody to mentor me. I fell in with the crowd that was doing wrong, but I didn't see that as wrong. I saw that as survival. I saw that as making sure that you had food on the table, making sure that your loved ones had clothes and they had a house and they had a car. A lot of that shit went out the window. 2026, people ain't families no more. And no matter how much bad stuff that I did when I was, I always came up with excuses. It was for this, it was for that. When actually, no matter how much that I said, it didn't make it true because it came down to my decision making. It came down to my choice. And I didn't care about what the effects would be or the reaction would be if it came down to criminal court or even came down to my family. But one thing that I can say is that I've learned from it. I wouldn't take, what the crazy thing is? I'm 49 years old, and there is not one thing that I wouldn't take back. Even when it comes to my sexual offense, I wouldn't take back. Because the same shit that supposedly was a crime, it's not a crime anymore. Motherfuckers do it all the time. And the crazy fact, doesn't even have to be two people in high school. It could be a 40-year-old man getting a 14-year-old pregnant and he gets a slap on the hand. Not no prison time, not no accountability time, because 60 days in work releases and accountability, I could do that standing on my head. That's not accountability. Should be wild to me, like the things that I see. I seen the other day down in Rochester, a person got caught with a pound of, that ain't even a key. That ain't even a key. 2.2 pounds is a key. You niggas are weird. And that is not nowhere near the biggest bust in Rochester, because the biggest bust came from a confidential informant. The same way that a lot of this shit you niggas still don't do nothing about is because there's so many rap motherfuckers in Rochester that want to be your friend or want to be this, want to be that. Whole time they some bitch niggas. They some bitch niggas. That's why I look at a lot of these niggas in Rochester. That's why I even look at Gucci Mane different. I ain't calling no police. I'm not doing none of that because I can tell you like this. I believe in an eye for an eye. I believe in eye for an eye. And I can tell you like this. None of these niggas would fight me one-on-one. None of them. They will jump me. So at the end of the day, you already know what's going to happen. Because I can tell you like this. I don't give a fuck who you are. I don't give a fuck who you are. I'm getting my get back. I'm getting my get back. And I'm going to go to each and every one house. I'm going to shoot that motherfucker up. And I don't give a fuck who is in there. Because I'm not one of these niggas that'll sit here, because I can tell you right now, there's a lot of motherfuckers that are in our community in the state of Minnesota that police officers that kill black people or even neighbors, community members who have I don't give a fuck who you are. If you the police, I don't give a fuck. I do not give a rat's ass because I believe in an eye for an eye. It's because you niggas don't. Just because you niggas don't doesn't mean that I don't. And you can call me pussy, you can call me a coward. Come try it and see how much I'm playing. Come try it and see how much I'm playing, man. Shit be crazy to me. And I hate when people send threats and they want to get in a motherfucking messenger. Nigga, come to my house. Come tell me in my face. Because I'm going to tell you right now, the only reason why your name is in my tongue is because y'all niggas have done bad. And you keep on doing bad. And I don't give a fuck who it is. Just, you know what the crazy thing of it is? I've lost. I won't even say I've lost. But when it comes down to friendships, of friends because of the things that I do. Because people see it as that I'm doing wrong, but not the people that are out here selling fentanyl, that are out here ratting and then call themselves a real nigga. Like, I don't even get that shit. There's so many people that would rather scam and live a lie than to live their life the best way that they know how without trying to get over on another person, because that's what everybody does. That's what a lot of people in North Minneapolis, they do. They like to jump over the little guy while the little guy is out here screaming for help. Well, they're trying to make a way. They don't give a fuck about them. That's why I don't even, to be honest, I don't get a lot of this shit. There's a lot of shit that has been traumatizing in Minneapolis. And because so many people would rather look the other way and keep on doing what they're doing, this is why Minneapolis has gotten bad. This is why. It ain't because of so much of the politicians. It's because we keep on doing the same old things over and over and over again. What is the definition of that? Craziness. That is craziness. What is the definition of crazy? Doing something over and over and over again. So I want to get into this one. Is about Brian Pippin. He was released, but it was for a murder. I don't really know all the details, but I know that the victim's family isn't happy. Neither is the sheriff, and I think it's worthy to sit here and get the whole answer. I don't know what everybody's accountability looks like. I don't know what everybody's view of justice looks like. But I can say this is that when it comes down to a lot of people and how they view justice, I agree with them. I agree with them. Like, you have fucked over the community. Like, are you expecting not to pay your debt to society? Because what is that debt? And I'll say it like this, that motherfuckers really need to start believing in that eye for an eye shit. Stop turning the other motherfucking cheek. That's why this bullshit keeps on going on. That's why I say this. If anything happened to my motherfucking kids, now I can guarantee you like this, same thing gonna happen to them. Like, this shit be stupid. So I've already said over and over in Rochester that if my daughter overdosed, knowing that there's a lot of motherfuckers that I know that are out selling pills and doing this and doing that, I'll be at your front door. And I don't give a fuck about 911. I don't give a fuck about no Olmsted County Sheriff, no Rochester Police. I don't give a fuck about none of that. I don't give a fuck about sitting behind bars, because I can tell you like this. I've sat behind bars and ain't did nothing wrong. Ain't did nothing wrong but stand up and be a black man. So if you can't understand that and wanting to go to jail for doing something that you actually will stand on, come and find out and see if you will not be carried by 6. Oh, hold on. Here we go again. Here we go again. It happens every once in a while. 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 You lose some and you win some.
Dan Gaida is my guest. Thank you for your service, sir. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for your report.
You know, despite advocate judges, soft on crime prosecutors, and the lingering consequences of defunding the police, there is still the idea of law and order and basic common sense, especially where you are in Minnesota. But this horrific case of 84-year-old Evelyn Malin highlights all of this. A beloved store owner in your community. For more than 50 years, Malin operated the Dollar Lake store in rural Aiken County, and it was back in 1998, the morning of February 24th, when Malin was beaten and strangled in her room in the back of the store where she lived. I know this was a very tragic murder that certainly left a mark on your community, didn't it, Sheriff? What can you tell us about what happened back then?
It was horrible. It was a scenario that made the whole world of ours very nervous about what was going on. Nobody knew who the murderer was. Nobody knew what was going on. We didn't have a lot of good evidence. Times were a little different back then as far as, investigative techniques. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have all those things that people depend on now. So a murder on the loose, or one or more for sure. The community was, sending out lots of intel, trying to get, information from different people. They would call us and say, I think it's this person. I think it's this person. They were being very helpful. We live in a community that's very pro law enforcement. They're friendly. They love public safety. So when this happened, it really left a big mark. A lot of people had been at Evelyn's store. Everybody that lived in the region had known Evelyn. They'd known the Dollar Lake store. Their parents had known the Dollar Lake store. If they had a cabin on Minnewawa, they knew hundreds of stories about them shopping there over the years. Maybe they bought their first 6-pack of beer there or something, or candy bars. My deputies have all been, at the time, had all been there and bought a snack here and there and visited with Miss Malin.
The suspect in this brutal murder was Brian Pippett. He was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. 3 of his accomplices were also found guilty. His conviction for the murder of Evelyn was upheld twice by the Minnesota Supreme Court, but in 2023, Pippett, I know, filed a motion to vacate his conviction. The Conviction Review Unit, a federally funded project under Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison's office, and with the Great North Innocence Project, they took up the case. Just take us back. What did you think when you first heard about this motion and this effort to free Pippett for this crime?
Well, I wrote a letter. I submitted it. The first information that we received is we got invited to a meeting at the county attorney's office. The undersheriff and I and the county attorney met with this Conviction Review Unit's legal team and had that conversation. And they had spent years preparing this case. There's no doubt. It was a giant stack of information. They had fabricated their story. They had taken the ability to just, backseat or armchair quarterback or however you want to look at it. They'd taken this and they fabricated the story based on what they believed could have happened, not based on the statements given, not based on the testimony of the people in the trial, not based on anything. They just came up with this fanciful idea of this is what happened. They had hired investigators to say, could this have happened? They presented them with, pieces of evidence, not the whole evidence, but they presented them with pieces of evidence. And they had this giant document that said, here you go, you can read this and let us know what you think. And they gave us about a week to read it. The document was unfortunately on a website where you couldn't really collect it. We didn't think it was going to disappear. And they changed the document and the document actually disappeared. Mm-hmm. They said things in that document like impossible, lots of different things about the evidence that couldn't have happened, basically making the story up. And they had a very coordinated attack on this case and the people of Aiken County.
So just to be clear, it's March of 2024. The Conviction Review Unit issues this report claiming that it was impossible for Evelyn's murder to have happened as it was presented during the trial. Not only did they claim that Pippett was innocent, they alleged that the prosecutors, law enforcement, even the defense attorneys engaged in misconduct. So you're talking about this, you're kept in the dark almost the entire time, kept out of the loop. Do you think that there's a reason for that?
Oh, for sure. They didn't want us to have the time to be able to defend ourselves. So they wanted to submit this in a way that, hey, you have 1 week to look at this and you can either sign and agree to it or come up with a solution. They've been preparing for years. The actual document itself, the way that it was presented was we have a couple choices. You can either fight this or you can agree to reopen this case. The Attorney General's office will agree to be the lead prosecutor on this case, and then we will dismiss it so that Aiken County doesn't look bad. That was what was presented to us. They didn't care about justice. They didn't care about what was going on. They wanted perception. It turned into, in my opinion, it turned into a thing about votes, not about doing what was right, not upholding the law.
Yeah, this Conviction Review Unit under Attorney General Ellison determined that Pippett's conviction was based on, quote, perjured recanted witness testimony. Well, that of course, has happened in cases across the country. That's not exactly the real story here in this case, is it? You started actually investigating their investigation and their allegations. What did you find out?
Correct. So I was involved with the case way back when, but I didn't do very much. We had the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension come in, and they had an investigative team. They spent months working this case. There was lots of information. Things would come in they had to follow up on. We disproved lots of theories. We proved some theories. We finally got a break in the case, and then we proceeded to prosecute. It was like a year after the actual initial case. The way that we dealt with it, or the way that I dealt with this, I looked at this thing and I thought, man, we're already, if what they're saying has even got a shred of truth, that we're biased about this, that the people of Aiken County are biased, we have to come up with a clean approach. We have to come up with an audit process. My whole career, I've demanded the truth. I want to know the truth. I want to support the truth. I want to know those things. And I'm a church guy, right? So someday we'll all find out the truth. But until then, we got to use the best thing we can to find the truth. So we actually reached out to the BCA again, and we had a independent team of auditors, excellent investigators, the top of the state, come forward and actually do an independent research analysis on all this evidence. And when they first came, they asked a lot of questions, and we provided them a lot of details, and we provided them statements. We provided them things in this case that weren't actually even used in trial. We provided all the evidence we collected, all the notes, all those things. And they did a full audit of this process. And by the time they were done, it was a unanimous feeling that everything in this case had been done absolutely correctly.
And you were surprised to learn along the way, Sheriff, that they didn't do things like go back to the crime scene, it sounds like, or you're actually questioning their experts, and the experts were not aware of some of the information. Is that right?
Yeah, so they had used a bunch of the paperwork, a bunch of the reports to kind of recreate some things. And I had a question. I said, well, if you say in the initial report, they said things like, it would be absolutely impossible for that to happen, right? Absolutely impossible. And I said, did you recreate that scenario? One of the things they talked about was this window. It was a small window in the basement, a crawl space, a small egress window that they had to drop into essentially a windowsill and then go through a frame and down into the basement. And the report said it was impossible to do that. For this, one of the co-conspirators, or one of the people that testified against Mr. Pippin in the trial was involved in the murder, he testified that they went through that. That was the way they got in and out of the house. The investigation that they had from the CRU was that it was impossible to go in and out of that window. I asked them, I said, did you go in and out of the window? They said they did not. We went back to the scene. We took the evidence from downstairs. We recreated the exact same window frame. We put that window frame back in this exact same hole that it was in. And we had people that had the same physical descriptions crawl through that window. We had 2 different people crawl through that window, and they were able to do it in just a matter of minutes. No issues, right? From their statements of it's impossible to do this to us being able to do it, we recorded it and sent it to them saying, hey, we thought they were on the same team. Hey, here, we want to prove to you that your statement is wrong. This is not an impossibility. Here's a video of 2 different individuals crawling through that window seam. They changed the report to say it was improbable. They didn't care about the truth. Wow. They didn't care about the evidence. They didn't care about the facts of the case. They just wanted to pick apart the case with the evidence they thought they could slander or change and make it look like Brian was innocent. That's all they cared about.
So ultimately, in September of 2025, the Minnesota Board of Pardons voted to commute the sentence of Brian Pippin. He was released from prison then in January of this year. He's now requesting clemency, which, among other things, could open the door for a lawsuit against the county, the state. But just for some insight here, the Board of Pardons, it's made up of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Attorney General Keith Ellison, and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Natalie Hudson. She voted no. But something I think a lot of people don't realize, since the DFL trifecta, they changed the law during the legislative session just a few years ago. The law has been the same way on the books for more than 100 years that required a unanimous vote. But her vote of no did not matter since Walz and Ellison voted yes. And this law was changed, allowing just 2 votes for this to go through. But what do you think about how they granted Pippett's release, and ultimately also how they seem to have changed things radically here in Minnesota when it comes to the justice system? And I think some would say perhaps, not for the better here.
Yeah. This wasn't a commutation issue. That was their way to get him out of jail. It felt like to me it was a promise that they made. In 2023, when they changed that legislation that allowed a majority versus unanimous rule, a lot of people questioned that. Why were they changing something that had been in place for so long?
Right.
It became clear why they changed it shortly later, and when they released Pippet for that incident.
Wow.
The scenario about the laws of Minnesota, what I concern myself with is when our system becomes broke, so the fact that the victims are no longer acknowledged or taken care of. And the only people that are supported in the system are the suspects in the system. We're going to have victims in society that come from outside the system. We're going to have people that take the law into their own hands. And we've been very careful about wanting people to believe in our system. We've done the best thing we can. We do our own audits. You know, that's why we have a Supreme Court in Minnesota. That's why we have higher courts in Minnesota. That's why this process was done from the beginning. And now if the process didn't work and the process failed everybody in Minnesota, if the process failed Evelyn Malin and the family of Evelyn Malin and the people of Aiken County, what's going to happen next? If you no longer trust in the system, what do we have? Our forefathers did a great job of writing the Constitution. They did a great job of making the laws in Minnesota. Our legislative bodies have done a great job of being balanced and making sure the right things happen. Our legislative process has been slow over the years for a reason. When the trifecta occurred, clearly a lot of big things changed, and it was political changes. It wasn't for the best of the people in Minnesota.
With all that in mind, in a 30-page letter to the Conviction Review Unit, you wrote, "The process is flawed. The AG's office has submitted a report that contradicts grand jury decisions, jury verdicts, judges' decisions, and 2 Supreme Court rulings." You also mentioned that in making accusations of misconduct, all of this was just blindly accepted, it seems, by the Attorney General, who is leading the Conviction Review Unit project, and again, one of the 3 members on the Board of Pardons. Does that sound like something that should even be allowed?
I reached out dozens of times to the Conviction Review panel. I sent emails with information. I did everything I could do. I went to the hearings. I reached out to them. I hand-delivered things, wanting them to open their eyes. This wasn't about people seeking the truth. This was about political benefits.
Looking at the bigger picture here, Sheriff, I know you're a lifelong Minnesotan. What does this say about our Attorney General's priorities?
You know, that makes me, I didn't know much about the Brian Pippet case when it came out or whatever. I didn't really do my research. I just saw that they was being looked at by the Conviction Review Unit. But then I'm like, damn. So Philip Vance's people recanted, they fabricated their stories with police, but you don't believe them, but you believe a man that benefited. See, I don't get that shit. That really, to me, it baffles me, because why do you believe people recanting? Because that's how a lot of this shit has came up. People have recanted their stories, or they weren't told the whole story. People are actually wrongfully, unjustly pointed out or made to be the fall guy. And the real person just got away with it. And people didn't really care. We're not out here trying to find the murderer of Jerry's flower shop, even though we should, because somebody paid over 20 years with their life. The same thing when it came to Tanisha Edwards. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're having so many people being wrongfully convicted, but we're not convicting the right person. They're even giving up on cases that, Minnesota's in a really fucking dark place right now. And I got to give it up to, I'm not really a big fan of fucking police. I'll be 100% honest. But there's so many stories, and I hate that we see justice in a political view. It's only right or wrong if depending on who it is. A Democrat will say it's right because they got to fall in line. The same thing with a Republican. And my question is, when is somebody going to finally stand up and say enough is enough? And I think some Republican legislators have, but I think some are so afraid to come out and talk, or afraid to stand up, because they're going to lose their election. And they shouldn't care about that. So because there is a lot of wrong shit in Minnesota. I don't know if going all the way to the left makes it right, but we sure haven't balanced it out. because we're still seeing injustice, injustice happen in Minnesota, and it all depends on politics. And that is the biggest problem that I see. Even when it comes to, this metro surge, they make Republicans look bad because they say one thing. They say one thing. A lot of that wouldn't happen if we didn't have the legislation, if we don't have the ordinances, if we don't have all these other things that make it hard to work with the federal office, the executive office. I mean, I'll be straight up. They literally make policies to fight the federal government. That's why you're seeing HCMC in the bullshit that it's in. It's policies. When you allow just anybody to come in there and you're gonna help them, even though they don't give nothing back to the state, you're just gonna help them. That to me, when we don't even help the people that have been here for years, who have been here for years and have been begging for help, we don't hear them. We ignore them. We silence them. They get retaliated on. They get demonized so that nobody will believe what they're saying.
Are we really talking about justice, or do you think this case is really just more about identity politics and more virtue signaling coming from that office?
So as a sheriff, I'm an elected official, just like judges, just like the attorney general, just like the governor. I'm a nonpartisan election. I don't have to say I'm a Republican or a Democrat or an independent. I kind of joke that I think about up and down, not left and right. I think about good versus evil and what takes over the world and how things work. This is evil. This is evil when they don't support the system. This is evil when people are able to do what they want to do and they get the support, and the victims don't have anybody to come after to say what happened here. This is evil. We're going to continue to fight evil. The sheriffs across the state of Minnesota stand strong together. We're going to fight evil. But when the politics get in front of good versus bad things happen. Right. We've seen that in the last year. Public safety suffers. The accountability in the system, if it's not there, then what good is the system? It does not work. A failed system is not going to be good for Minnesota. I still have hope. I still have hope that we can fix this. I still have hope. If I didn't have hope, I wouldn't have been sending letters. I wouldn't have been calling people. I wouldn't have been doing the things that I've done. But that's where we're at today. It's going to take a lot of work.
So it seems there is a lot at stake for law and order in this particular case. What do you hope will happen here, and why has it been so important for you to push back on this, Sheriff?
It's the right thing to do. It's to support the system. It's to support the people of Aiken County and the people of Minnesota. It's to let the system as written work. The process that we have is not flawed. It's worked for a long time. Justice has been served across the state of Minnesota. Shortly after this case, the opportunity for pardoning or opportunity for release of a life sentence disappeared. Brian Pippett was convicted in a goofy time frame where that was allowed, and who knows what's next. I don't want to see the world get worse for my children or my grandchildren or my great grandchildren or my neighbors or their kids or their grandkids or any of that stuff. I really hope we can get back on the track and fight good and evil.
Aiken County Sheriff Dan Gaida, thank you again.
Yeah, that's crazy because they won't even look at cases that they should be looking at when it comes to the conviction review unit. No matter if it came to James Wren, people can't even get answers back from Keith and them, which is really crazy to me. A man asked a question that I really thought was interesting this morning, because I do see a lot of Black people talking about the redistricting. So I want to play this, about 2 minutes long, but he does have a great question, and people should actually.
It's pro-Black, and you can say, you know what, I'm glad. What's up, everybody? Zeke here. So I got a question, because there's something that's been kind of bothering me for the past couple of days with all this redistricting, and you have all the blacker than black crowd saying, oh, we're going to lose representation, and this is going to put us back to Jim Crow, and this is going to be so detrimental for the Black community. My question is, and it's a real simple one, you can answer in the comments, because I always have the people who always want to straighten me out and check me. My question to you is, what has all this black representation gotten the black community? I mean, just honest question. Can you point to anyone in Congress who is pro-black? And you can say, you know what? I'm glad they're there because they were able to get this. Has Jasmine Crockett been able to secure funding for this project in the black community? You know, have any of them done anything? Any of these black Congress folks, any of these people who say, I'm here and this is a great thing because I'm black, what have they done specifically for the black community where losing them will be a bona fide loss? Because I'm curious about that. They've only helped themselves. Like Jasmine Crockett will remind you every 5 minutes that she's a black woman, but I can't think of anything she's done. You know, so any of them at all, Hakeem Jeffries, any of them, what have they done where you can look at it and go, you know what, I'm glad they're there because the black community is really doing big things because of them? What have they done? And if they haven't done anything, why are they in Congress? Just my question. Put it out there. Zeke Arkham, got your 6. Bye. What's up?
He asked a very good question. What have they done? Bobby Rush, I think about, especially when this comes up, I think about Bobby Rush, who was a Black Panther, was what? Fred Hampton, and was in the Black Panthers when Fred Hampton got killed. You didn't change anything for black folks because I can tell you like this, in Chicago, in Illinois, they run rampant with fraud. It didn't matter if it was Tiffany Haynard or the city of Chicago, or it's been a lot of bullshit. I mean, the crazy thing with trips me about Chicago is you don't even have the residents that talk about the fact that their mayor sold their forget what it's called, but like their parking. They don't even own their parking rights anymore. It's some national, international company, and they actually should go get it back, but they haven't, and they should. Yeah, because that's wild to me. That shit goes on, and people know that it's bad, but instead of speaking up and making sure that gets eradicated from our community, they don't. People don't stand up. They look at it, act like it doesn't faze them or doesn't matter to them. So I'm gonna get up out of here. Today's Wednesday. Not much time left in the session. There's some bills out here that with gun control, with immigration. So just watch it. I know the Democrats are going to come out and say something, and so will the Republicans. I can tell you like this. In the Twin Cities, in that 10-county area, I think that is enough to control Minnesota. I think, and especially the areas in Rochester, Duluth, St. Cloud. I think those 5, because I'm only counting the Twin Cities as one area, right? That's St. Paul, Dakota, Ramsey, Hennepin, Washington. I'm talking about all them big ass counties up there because I do feel a lot of Republicans. Paul Novotny's not running again. He's not rerunning. So that's probably a seat that'll turn Democratic. So we have to literally make sure that we get the Republican seats that are there, and not only there, but also flip a couple districts. We have to. If we don't want to see Minnesota become a shitty ass state, we have to make sure that they flip districts. We have to. And that the red districts stay red. I'm not saying that, because to be honest, I don't know where the hell we're going. I don't know if we should be the Republican way. All I know, or even the Democratic way, right? All I know is to be behind the people, right? Because the people have been there for me. Yeah, I'll never take no kind of payment to sell my people out or anything like that. Doesn't matter if you're black, doesn't matter if you're white. I don't give a fuck if you're gay. Don't matter to me. I'm not trying to sleep with you. I have a very loving wife that I really love with everything, the bottom of my heart, that does everything for me. And I don't even know where I would be without her. So definitely not going to fuck her over just to be something. Like, yeah, get the fuck out of here. I don't get it. But like I said, man, everybody have a safe Wednesday, hump day. But watch the legislation. Watch the House floors, both the Senate and the House, because there's a lot of shit that'll be going on these next couple of days. And I want people to think about this. Today in the House and the Fraud and Waste Committee, they had an 84-page report that Democrats complained about. Now let's look at these omnibus bills that are thick as hell, and they only gave them 24 hours to read. So again, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Like I said, man, I'll see y'all tomorrow, same time, same place. Here is Too Filthy Ricky, Player Baby, and I'll see y'all same time, same place tomorrow. Have a good one.
Hey, I ain't worried about what no nother nigga doing or what they did. What you know about the feds, you ain't never did no bid. You ain't never kicked no dope, sold no dope, pimp no hoe at all. You ain't never seen no brick for real. You a bitch for real. I'm speaking in general. Don't take this shit personal. She ain't have no booty, but her head game was surgical. Specialist, I made her delete all of my messages. She told me that I'm handsome. Ask me if I'm mixed with Mexicans. She choosing me, bitch, come off that choosing fee. Baby gave me neck like she had something to prove to me. 120 racks, spinning these palm angel pockets. These hoes run from me, don't fuck with him. That nigga toxic, that's crazy. I can't help that I'm a player, baby. Shout out CVL, baby. Jim and Chew intense, she keep on asking what's that smell, baby. Come work for a player, baby. Come work for a player, baby. Take some naked pictures for my niggas in that jail, baby. Bust it wide open for my niggas in that cell, baby. Show you how to weigh a whole bale.